Okay, here I go again with another album ranking review. Don't turn away, my children of the night, because this is hot stuff. It's Judgment Day as to which is the best Whitesnake album of them all. Let's slide it in slow and easy. Come and get it. Welcome back to Rocker's Beer Review. Today we're going to be doing an album ranking of the band Whitesnake. What a great band. Now this band has got such a great emotional attachment to me, basically because it was the first of the sort of hard rock, heavy metal type of bands that I got into. If I take you back to the sort of late 80s when I was 16 years old, I'd sort of, the 80s was over. Pop music had got a bit, Stock Aitken and Waterman, and I needed an outlet. I needed new music to listen to. I mean, God, at the time I was listening to the likes of Simply Red and Alexander O'Neill and Luther Vandross. It was my soul phase, I suppose. So, as I joined the sixth form at 16, ready to start my A-levels, I sort of got in with this new crowd, and they were talking about this type of music called heavy metal. So, wanted to be part of the crowd, I went down to my local library to see what they had. And there's the two tapes that I borrowed from the library at that time. One of them was 1987 by Whitesnake. The other was The Final Countdown by Europe. These two albums shaped my whole musical sort of outlook in life. Whitesnake especially was something that I just became really, really close to. And still to this day, they're probably one of my favourite bands, certainly within hard rock. So, this is quite an emotional journey through their albums and ranking them. They've obviously been going since the late 70s. There's 12 albums to go through. I'm not going to cover the sort of David Coverdale sort of fronted. They did say David Coverdale's Whitesnake, but to me they were more of a solo album, so I'm not including them here. So these are the 12 official Whitesnake albums. So let's start with number 12. So in 12th place, we start right at the beginning. Their first album, Trouble. I mean, this was a little bit, it was a bit rough around the edges. The opener, Take Me With You, I think is really good. That sort of guitar sound at the beginning, every time I hear it, it reminds me of Atomic Punk, which actually came out after it when you think about it. And I really like the other rocker on there, Nighthawk Vampire Blues. It was really a sort of template that David Coverdale was putting together in terms of how he expected Whitesnake. But to me, it's probably still their poorest album in 12th position. In 11th position, and this is where I think we might start going a little controversial, is Saints and Sinners. Now, this was sort of really at the end of their UK English blues type of era. And for me, it just doesn't do it for me. I mean, you've got the original versions of Here I Go Again and Crying in the Rain, but to me, that they're the remade and re-visualized versions of those songs are much better. There's just too many of the old 12-bar blues. There's songs on here that remind me of Chaz and Dave and Status Quo, which is not what I want from Whitesnake. Probably the best album on here, the best song on this album is probably the opener, Young Blood. I think that's pretty good. But yeah, Bloody Luxury and Rock and Roll Angels really sort of bring this album down. So I'm putting Saints and Sinners in 11th position. In 10th position, and it's an album that's often sort of derided by the fans, but I quite like it, and that's the Purple album. Now, this was the album that was basically covers of the Deep Purple, certainly David Coverdale's Deep Purple era when he was in Deep Purple. So there's songs on here. There's some really great Deep Purple songs. They've obviously got that sort of Whitesnake American rock sort of sheen on them, and I think that's why a lot of people don't like them. But I actually think some of these songs actually sound better with modern production and a much more upfront guitar on it. I think Reb Beach, who's one of the guitarists, does a real great job with this album, with his guitar playing. So I'm putting the Purple album in 10th position. In 9th position is Good to Be Bad. Now, this was the return really after over a decade of no new music, and it was back to that sort of harder rock, late 80s, early 90s sort of era of Whitesnake. We had a new lineup with Doug Aldrich and Red Beach on guitars, and there's a great combination of rockers and ballads on here, but there's no songs to me that really stand out, and that's why out of the sort of the three latest albums, I'm putting this one in the last place in 9th position. In 8th position is Forevermore. Now this was the one that continued after Good to Be Bad, and it's quite difficult to separate these two albums. They're both good. It's good to see that David Coverdale is back and his voice sounds really great on the albums. But I'm putting Forevermore just higher up than Good to Be Bad, basically because the title track is probably one of the best things that Whitesnake have done, best things that Coverdale has written, probably since Sailing Ships from Slip of the Tongue. So that's why Forevermore gets my 8th position. In 7th position, we're going back again to the early stuff, Love Hunter. Now, this has got an absolutely fabulous album cover. I mean, just check out this album cover. Okay, you know, you probably wouldn't get away with it these days. It's a little sexist, but it's a really good album. And the two standout tracks, the title track, Love Hunter, really bluesy. And obviously, if you like blues, you love Walking in the Shadow of the Blues. I think that's another really cracking song. There's another song that is quite interesting. It's called Outlaw. I really like it. It was only, but only when you realise that it's actually not David Coverdale singing. It's the guitarist Bernie Marsden singing. But again, it's a good rocker. Love Hunter's a good album, and look, you can't forget Love Hunter from just that album cover. As a teenage boy, you know, an album cover like that sitting on the shelves is quite irresistible, really, isn't it? In 6th position, and again from their older stuff, is Come and Get It. This is, to me, is their blues rock at their very best. I love the title track, Lonely Days, Lonely Nights, Child of Babylon, two great tracks as well. But the real standout track for me is the song Don't Break My Heart Again, with an absolutely fabulous, real bluesy solo. Probably one of my favourite sort of tracks from their sort of early era. I really do like that song. So Come and Get It in 6th position. In 5th position is their latest album, Flesh and Blood. You know, after the sort of reboot, as it were, I think that this is the strongest of the three. Songs sound great. I think Red Beach, who is a really great guitarist, has now sort of stepped up a bit more because Doug Aldrich has left. So he's more involved in the writing, and I think the songs are better for it. There's some real great rockers on there, but for me, the standout track is the song Heart of Stone. Really bluesy with a real great guitar playing in it. I really do like that album, and I'm interested to see if we ever get any more albums from Whitesnake, whether it will continue with that great run of form. So Flesh and Blood is in 5th position. In 4th position is Ready and Willing. I mean, it's probably my favourite from their sort of blues UK, David Coverdale with brown hair sort of era. The title track is brilliant. Ain't Gonna Cry No More is a really good song. But one of my favourite songs, and actually from this album, probably one of my favourite Whitesnake songs, is the sort of often missed, because I don't think they ever, but I've never seen them play it live, is Blind Man. This is a really stunning sort of ballad, and it's one of my favourite songs, and that's why I give Ready and Willing 4th position. Okay, so now we're heading into the top three, and I don't think my top three is going to be much different than many other people's top three. In 3rd position, it's Slide It In. So this was the real sort of album that linked with their sort of early UK blues when they were moving into that sort of American hard rock. Certainly the US version of this album that was re-released with John Sykes playing lead guitar on it is even closer to that sort of hard rock template that they were sort of famous for, really. But again, great songs really sort of jump out. You've got Slide It In, the title song. Slow and Easy is a really good. Standing in the Shadows, and probably the standout track, certainly for me, is Love Ain't No Stranger. I mean, I do wonder, because you've got the original guitarist, you've got Neil Murray, who also was on the album after this, and Cozy Powell and drums on this album. And I think he was really sort of, I think that's where the hard rock sort of stuff came from. You know, this is where the powerhouse came. His drumming is really sort of, you know, quite big and strong on this album, and it's probably the best sort of drumming that we can get from it. You know, Cozy Powell is a superb drummer. And you know, he was going to play on the follow-up 1987, but contracts he didn't think he was going to get paid enough money, so he decided not to do it. But I just wonder where they went, because I think his drumming is quite a big impact on this album. So in third place, Slide It In. In second place, again, I don't think the problem with this album, and the album is Slip of the Tongue, is that Steve Vai came aboard as a guitar player on this album. He was the sort of secondary guitarist. Adrian Vandenberg, co-wrote all the songs with David Coverdale. But the problem was he broke his wrist, I think it was. So he couldn't actually play on the album. So Steve Vai played all the guitars on the album. And he's sort of, Steve Vai is a superb guitarist. I don't know if his fit with Whitesnake was quite right, but there's some real, big guitar pyrotechnics on this sort of album. But whether it sort of moves so far away from that sort of bluesy sort of origins, I suppose, of the band, they were then very much a sort of almost a pastiche of themselves there, very much in that sort of big glam rock sort of image, really. But there's some great songs on here. Let's go through the bad ones first. Kitten's Got Claws, slow poke music, cheap and nasty even. They're a little bit Whitesnake by numbers. They're a little bit, bit too tongue-in-cheek, really. But there's some really great rocking tracks. The title track, Slip of the Tongue, I think is really good. Wings of the Storm is probably another really strong track. Also things like the very sort of Kashmir by Led Zeppelin inspired song Judgment Day. I think that's a really good song, even though it is a little bit of a rip-off of the Kashmir. But probably my favourite song on the album is the last track, Sailing Ships. This was their sort of real sort of template for doing a nice soft ballad that really sort of builds and builds and really lets loose at the end. I think it's a really great song. And this album, obviously came after the huge success of its predecessor, so it was in that shadow, but it's still a very good album. So Slip of the Tongue is in second place. So that leaves the best of the Whitesnake albums. Let's face it, 1987 has to be the top Whitesnake album. In my opinion, it's probably one of the top albums of all time, in terms of hard rock. I still listen to it quite regularly today. There's so many good songs on it. Obviously people are going to know it for Here I Go Again and Is This Love. They were big chart smashers. But for me, the best songs on this album are things like Still of the Night, Bad Boys, Children of the Night, Crying in the Rain. That was obviously a redone version from the Saints and Sinners album. But, it's almost, it's almost uncomparable with that. It's so hard rocking, the drums are so powerful in it, and John Sykes, who's all over this album, and I think it's John Sykes' guitar playing that really takes this to another level. Certainly the sound, it has a huge big 80s sort of sound, lots of layered guitars, but John Sykes to me is one of the best guitar players ever, and I just wish that him and David Coverdale had sorted themselves out and got on with each other, because they could have made so many great albums together. What's my favourite song off this album though? Probably Looking for Love, which to some is a strange one, because in the US, the original US version didn't even have Looking for Love on it, but the UK version had it on. Now Looking for Love, it starts a bit like Is This Love in terms of it's a slow ballad, but after the guitar solo, which is a fabulous guitar solo, it then sort of builds and builds and builds till you've got this stunning outro solo by John Sykes, probably my favourite solo by John Sykes, and that's what just makes this song. Looking for Love is a superb song. I'm interested to know what your favourite song on this album is. Would this album be number one? Are you more into sort of early bluesy rock stuff? Or maybe you've only discovered Whitesnake since they're sort of 2000, in this millennium, in the 2000s. But I'm interested to know what you think. Is 1987 the best Whitesnake album? What do you think? What are your favourite songs on it? And what's your favourite Whitesnake song of all time? I hope you've enjoyed this video. As I said, Whitesnake to me are one of my favourite bands. I hold them very strongly, but I'm sure there's a lot of people with different opinions. Certainly I found that these ranking videos, there's always someone I'm going to upset because of the way that I've put it. Is that Purple album, should it be at the end? Should some of the newer stuff be higher up? I'm interested to know what you think. Let me know in the comments. Hope you enjoyed the video, and remember, until the next one, keep on rocking.